At this time, Geneva was a small Protestant republic surrounded by Catholic states and dependencies. It was geographically isolated from its neighbours by the ice-capped peaks of the Alps and the picturesque waters of Lake Geneva. The city owed its republicanism and independence to the 16th-century religious reformer John Calvin, who had made it a bastion of Protestantism. Its citizens were upright and democratic. Rousseau's father was intensely proud of his native city, describing it to his son in terms of Sparta and ancient Rome. Rousseau's mother had left them a small library of books, and his father would read them with his son after supper. Soon they both became so absorbed in this activity that they would continue into the night, taking turns to read. We could never stop before the end of the book. Sometimes when my father heard the larks at daybreak, he would be ashamed and exclaim, "Let's go to bed. I'm more of a child than you." Young Rousseau found himself the centre of attention in an almost exclusively female household, with a nurse, an aunt, and occasional admiring relatives. Sitting at his aunt's knee as she embroidered, he would listen to her singing her seemingly endless repertoire of traditional songs. Rousseau was fascinated, acquiring a deep interest and understanding of music at an early age. But the element of undermining ambivalence remained. Years later, he would describe himself at this stage as having a heart at once so proud and so tender, with an effeminate yet indomitable character, vacillating between weakness and courage, self-indulgence and virtue. He saw himself as a contradiction with myself. Then, suddenly, everything changed. One day, Rousseau's father became involved in a public argument with a local landowner, whom he challenged to a duel. But the landowner contemptuously refused to duel with him because of his lower social origins. Incensed, Rousseau's father drew his sword and struck the landowner on the cheek, drawing blood. Rousseau's father disappeared into exile, in Rousseau's words, rather than cede a point on which honour and liberty appeared to him compromised. In fact, to avoid a jail sentence. Rousseau's circumstances changed overnight, and he was farmed out to poor relations, a pastor and his sister who lived in a nearby village. While living there, he would be subjected to humiliations and beatings by the pastor's sister, which provoked in him a feeling of violence and injustice. This would have a lasting effect, so that for the rest of his life he could claim that "my blood boils at the spectacle or recital of an unjust act." But these beatings by the parson's sister also induced in him a precocious sexual pleasure, which would have an equally lasting effect. Who could have believed that this punishment received at the age of 8 from the hand of a woman of 30 determined my tastes, my desires, my passions, my very self for the rest of my life? The experience brought to the surface a latent masochism, which would characterize his sexuality throughout his life. At the age of 13, Rousseau was apprenticed to an engraver in Geneva. The city may have been a model of righteous democracy, but its Calvinist atmosphere was also Puritan and oppressive. This was no place for the likes of Rousseau, who later wrote of himself in these years, indicatively in the third person present, that his character derives almost completely from his temperament alone. He was undoubtedly possessed of an intellect, but his reactions were inspired almost entirely by his emotions. He is what nature has made him. Nature has modified him only little. In this self-contradiction lies the essence of Rousseau's thought. Even here he is utterly himself. The seeds of the man, his temperament, his entire philosophy lie in this character, which would retain so many of the fervent and unstable qualities of adolescence throughout his life. Just short of his 16th birthday, Rousseau disappeared from Geneva and fled to neighbouring Savoy, now part of France but then under Sardinian control. Here he was soon taken into the household of Madame de Warren, a local landowner who was separated from her